Good day, my name is Jean R. Arubo and I will be the reporter of Process of Communication. To start my discussion, I will give a short definition of communication. Communication, a two-way process wherein the message is conveyed between two or more people in the form of ideas, emotion, feelings, and the views with the aim of forming a common understanding. So what is a communication process? It is a guide toward realizing effective communication. It is through the communication process that the sharing of a common meaning between sender and the receiver takes place. So this is the whole illustration of communication process. And it has two factors, the sender and the receiver. Communication always starts with the sender and ends with the receiver. It also has four key concepts: the encoding, medium of transaction, decoding, and feedback. So communication process has also have a barrier that I will show you later on. For now, let us discuss first the flow of the communication process. So as you can see in the model, the communication process starts with the sender. Why? Simply because the process of communication will always begin with the sender. Without sender, there will be no communication. So what is sender? Sender is an individual, group, or organization who initiates the communication. That's why if there's no sender, there will be no communication. So sender's message could be influenced by his or her experience, attitudes, knowledge, competence, perspective, and culture. And according to Burnett and Dollar 1989, the written words, spoken words, nonverbal language selected are paramount in ensuring the receiver interprets the message as intended by the sender. So, after the sender conceptualizes the idea that he or she intends to deliver to others, the first step he or she will do is the encoding process. It's one of the four key concepts of communication process. So what is encoding? Encoding is translating information into a message in the form of symbols that represents the idea or concepts. So from conceptualizing the idea of message, it will translated or to encoded message to communicate, where the receiver must understand what is being encoded. So the symbols can take on numerous forms such as language, words, or gestures. So the sender's knowledge, skills, perception, background, competencies, and etc. has a great impact on the success of the message. So some advice. It is important for the sender to use symbols that are familiar to the intended receiver. Why? Because communication will fail if the receiver will not understand what symbol you use to convey or to deliver the message you want him or her to interpret. Second advice, a good way for the sender to improve encoding their message is to mentally visualize the communication from the receiver's point of view. After the message is being encoded, it will pass through medium of transmission, or it's also called or also known as channel. It is used to deliver message. In the medium of transmission or channel, we have communication mediums are oral, virtual, written, sound, and gesture. And visual channels are becoming more common as technology expands. So, for example of visual channels is that Messenger, because it already involves technology, or Google Meet. To ensure that the message is received effectively and is understood correctly by the recipient, the channel or medium used to transmit the message must be carefully chosen. The recipient and the sender's interpersonal interaction, as well as the urgency of the message being communicated, influence the medium that is chosen. So after the message passed through the medium or the channel, it's time for the receiver for decoding. It's where the stimulus is sent to the brain for interpreting in order to assign some type of meaning to it. As I said, in this time, the receiver will begin to interpret the symbols sent by the sender. He or she will translate the message to her own set of experience in order to make the symbols meaningful and understandable for him or her. An effective communication occurs only if the receiver understands the message in exactly the same way as it was intended by the sender. So for the end of the communication process, here comes the receiver. Because as I said, the communication process starts with the sender and it ends with the receiver. So the receiver is whom the message is directed. So all interpretations by receivers are influenced by their experiences, attitudes, knowledge, skills, perception, and culture. Because it will them who will absorb the information and understand it by their own way. Receiver is the listener, reader, or observer in the communication process. So as what is said, listeners do the processing and analyzing of information given to them for them to have a clear feedback. So, dito papasok yung feedback. What is feedback? The receivers respond in some way and signals that response to the sender. So, the last stage of the procedure assures that the message has been received and understood by the recipient in the manner intended by the sender. The response of the receiver can be verbal or non-verbal, depends on what medium they use to transmit the message. So, feedback is a key component in the communication process because it allows the sender to evaluate the effectiveness of the message. And according to Bovey and Thiel 1992, feedback plays an important role by indicating significant communication barriers, difference in background, different interpretation of words, and differing emotional reactions. Now, as I said, communication always have a barrier. And what is this? This is the noise. It could happen anywhere. It could happen during the transmission of message in the medium of transmission or channel. It could happen during the encoding of the sender. It could happen during the decoding of the receiver. Or it could also happen in the feedback. So noise, anything that interferes with the communication process between speaker and audience, between the sender and the receiver. So anything that will go between the communication process of sender and receiver will be considered as barrier. And the most common known is noise. As you can see in the illustration, noise. Noise is also another common barrier, as I said. Noise can occur during any stage of the process. I already said that to kanina. There are external noise. External noise is a physical noise, like a dog barking while I am talking to someone giving information. That, for example, the dog is barking. That already interrupt or become a barrier to the sender and receiver. Then there's also internal noise, a mental disturbance. We cannot avoid that sometimes when we're having conversation or communicating with someone, there's suddenly an idea or something that pop up in your mind that can disturb the flow of the communication process. Please keep in mind that the communication process starts with the sender. Then the sender will encode his or her conceptualized idea to symbols that can be understood by his or her intended receiver. Then after the encoding, the message will go through the medium of transmission or the channel. Then after in the channel, it will be decoded by the receiver, where the receiver will process and analyze what is the given information by the sender, so he or she, the receiver, could clearly give feedback to the sender's message. And if there's any interruption or disturbance between the communication process of the sender and receiver, that is called barrier. And the most common example is really the noise. It has been observed that individuals who comprehend the communication process develop into more effective communicators, and successful communicators have higher chance of success. And that's all for my report. Thank you.